Hello, and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent McCurry from the Voice of America in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, I'm Vincent McCurry at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Commission, has approved the exit of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger Republic from the bloc, with an offer of a 6-month grace period for them to reconsider their stance. The West African bloc made this known at the 66th Ordinary Session of the Authority of Heads of State and Governments chaired by Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu at the banquet hall of the State House in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. The 3 departing countries were founding members of ECOWAS when it was established in 1975. They have now formed a new group, the Alliance of Sahel States. Our State House correspondent, Empress Simon, reports.
The 66th Ordinary Session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government begins with a group photograph of the leaders of member states led by its chair, President Bola Tinubu, upon their arrival. Shortly after, they go into the hall for the meeting. All member states are present except, of course, the junta-led heads of government of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, who are conspicuously absent. In his statement, President of the ECOWAS Commission, Omar Torre, commends the leadership of President Tinubu in the bloc and for ensuring Nigeria keeps up to its financial obligation to ECOWAS.
Nigeria paid 85 billion naira and 54 million US dollars, representing 100% of the 2023 levy and the levy of 2024 up to July 2024.
President Nana Akufo-Addo is making his last appearance at the meeting as the 13th president of Ghana, following the recently held elections in Ghana, which produced a new president in the waiting. His party's gesture in conceding defeat to the opposition is commended by President Tinubu, who enjoins other member states to take a cue.
Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, thank you for being who you are. A sincerely committed Democrat who has been a shining example. I therefore invite all of us to give him a standing ovation and more applause.
President Tinubu then calls for more cooperation among ECOWAS members.
As leaders, we are fully aware that security is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Equally, enhancing the living standard of our people is not an aspiration, but an obligation.
After the speeches, members of the media are excused as the meeting goes into a closed-door session for the consideration of the report by the ECOWAS mediation mission led by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal and Faure Gnassingbé of Togo, among other reports. Hours later, the meeting opens with the president of the ECOWAS Commission presenting the communique, which highlights some of the major decisions taken regarding Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger's membership of ECOWAS.
3 countries will officially cease to be members of ECOWAS from 29 January 2025. The authority decides to set the period from 29 January 2025 to 29 July 2025 as a transitional period and to keep ECOWAS doors open to the 3 countries during the transition period.
The meeting comes to a close with the final remarks by the chair.
I call on all member states
to redouble their efforts in ensuring that decision reached here translates into tangible benefits for our citizens.
Joining us to discuss this is an African Affairs analyst, PoliticsToday. Glad to have you on Africa 54.
Yeah, it's a pleasure always.
Right, so do you think the withdrawal of the junta-led countries from the ECOWAS is a major setback for unity and efforts geared towards economic stability and security in the region?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what gives us that impression is the fact that the remaining, the main bloc of ECOWAS right now, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, have been trying very hard to bring them back into the fold. If they were not important, they wouldn't have been making all the efforts to bring them back into the ECOWAS family. And obviously, they know that the original vision of ECOWAS will not be complete in terms of implementation of all the ECOWAS protocols without the whole being present. And now you have a fractious ECOWAS, and the original vision of ECOWAS essentially was to involve all the members of the countries in West Africa, pulling their resources together for the purpose of a political, integration and economic, achieving certain economic successes, as well as also cultural imperatives within the West African sub-region. And so a loss of 3 countries would damage that vision a bit. It's not as if they cannot try to move forward without them, but the whole is always better than the part. And that's why they made all the efforts in the past to try to see whether they could bring them back into the fold. So it definitely it is going to affect the ECOWAS moving forward. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
And do you see future fractionalization within the regional body?
Well, there is no basis for that now. But again, the fact that it could happen with one country, the second country, and then the third country all pulling together in one direction, moving away from ECOWAS, there is nothing that stops any other country within the West African sub-region from doing the same. But that would seem improbable right now, because it is very clear that all the other members of the remaining members of the ECOWAS, those who are still intact, and they have not been happy with the exit of these 3 countries.
And the creation of the AES has enabled these military regimes to at least partially insulate themselves from outside pressure for a return to civilian rule. Are there indications that these regimes will relinquish power in the near future?
No, there's no indication to that. Obviously, the ambition of the junta is diametrically opposed to the ambition of ECOWAS. They do not want to tread the path of democratization, it would seem. Even when the going was good in terms of the diplomatic discussions between the 2 parties, ECOWAS and these countries, these individual countries, it was very clear that the mandate that ECOWAS wanted in terms of the timing for democratization process was met with some level of pessimism and reluctance by the military administration. In some cases, ECOWAS was talking about 18 months to get back to the path of democratization at the elections, while some of them were talking about 3 years and 4 years. So you could see that there is nothing really that they are reluctant. There is nothing to indicate that they have not set timelines. Essentially, I think, and that's the major thing. But beyond that is the fact that I think it is going to take a different kind of pressure from the people, when the people themselves would seem to be fed up with the military regime, that agitations will start. And then the regime would also realize that they have a limited time because they cannot, when it gets to that level, I'm not sure that they have the ability to put the people down forever.
Right. And do you think there was enough diplomacy that took place on the part of ECOWAS before the final separation from the bloc?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that diplomacy was given an adequate chance to succeed. And I think that what happened with over this crisis was that immediately it happened, the coup took place. The cat was immediately put before the horse. And that is not the first thing you do in diplomacy. You have to engage. You have to be involved in one kind of overture or the other. You are in a friendly atmosphere, even though, yes, you know that you're not happy as a regional body with what has happened in those countries. But you don't start by issuing threats. And I think it is the initial threat. These threats that were issued by the president of ECOWAS then played into the hands of the military junta. Perhaps they were waiting for that kind of opportunity. So I think that in a way, ECOWAS provided the opportunity for them to dig in, and then buttress whatever positions they wanted to buttress, and then till it got absolutely out of hand. And then for them, it got to a level where they said they were no longer interested in, being part of ECOWAS. So perhaps ECOWAS walked into a trap. The diplomacy was not given enough. There was not enough opportunity for diplomacy, and I think that had to do with perhaps the inexperience of the president of ECOWAS at that particular point in time. He was absolutely angry with what has happened, and wanted the full stop to that. But if they had engaged, I believe, career diplomats, people who have experience, and we have a lot of them, very notable, diplomats who would have given the right kind of advice that would lead to perhaps a better outcome. Yeah. I'm not sure that there was enough time to consult with them, and then we are where we are today.
Right. African Affairs Analyst Achike Chude, thank you so much for your time on the program.
It's been a pleasure, Joke. Thank you.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, Sierra Leone's Ebola vaccination campaign aims to reach at least 5,000 healthcare workers. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Sierra Leone has launched an Ebola vaccination campaign aimed at targeting at least 5,000 health workers. Victoria Amunga reports from Kenema.
The name of dozens of healthcare workers who died in the 2014 Ebola outbreak. The names are displayed outside a hospital in Kenema, one of the worst-hit cities during the 2-year outbreak that killed nearly 4,000 people in Sierra Leone. Mohamed Feika, a healthcare worker here, recalls how many of his co-workers died after contracting Ebola while caring for patients.
That greatly affected me, looking at some social activity as well. You as well. Let me just ignore myself. Let me look at other people.
Now there's an Ebola vaccination campaign to protect healthcare workers like Feika. The Gavi Vaccine Alliance in June launched a preventive Ebola vaccination program to help contain the disease and protect critical healthcare and frontline workers in high-risk countries like Sierra Leone.
There was that kind of fear among healthcare workers, even among the entire population. So upon taking the vaccine, I now have the confidence that maybe when there is an outbreak, I will not be infected.
The single-dose vaccine is being provided to healthcare workers in countries that have had Ebola cases and those that border countries that have experienced Ebola outbreaks.
It's going to be 20,000 vaccines to start with, and we feel this is sufficient to cover the frontline workers I've just mentioned and protect those that are most vulnerable. And then, of course, we will be replenishing the stockpile so we still have that 500,000 and then moving to other countries that are at high risk of Ebola outbreaks.
The Ebola virus is spread through contact with the bodily fluids of an infected person. The average fatality rate for Ebola is about 60%, according to Gavi. Since Sierra Leone is considered a high-risk area, the government has set up a public health agency to enhance detection of the disease and prevent further outbreaks.
We know we are in an endemic zone. We know it's only the matter of when and not if that will be an outbreak. Every week we have a suspected case that we have to respond to. So a dedicated agency has been created to just look at that, preparedness and response.
As part of the campaign, community and religious leaders are encouraging the public to accept the shots. The Reverend Usman Fona is one such leader.
We use the pulpit. The mosques use the mimbar. The churches use the pulpit on Sundays and on Fridays. At weekday meetings, also at naming ceremonies, when we go to name children, we let the congregation that are present to know the value of vaccination.
More than 11,000 people died during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa between 2014 and 2016, most of them in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea. Authorities hope the Ebola vaccination campaign will help avert such a disaster in the future. Victoria Amunga, VOA News, Kenema, Sierra Leone.
Nigeria's Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, has announced plans by the Nigerian Army to upscale kinetic and non-kinetic approach in addressing the challenges of insurgents in the country. He stated this during this year's Chief of Army Staff Conference in Abuja, the nation's capital. General Oluyede says the Army, in conjunction with the other security agencies, will remain steadfast and committed to protecting lives and properties of all citizens and residents in the country.
It's the first annual Chief of Army Staff Conference under the leadership of Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede as the Chief of Army Staff.
Command Nigerian Army.
The conference presents a veritable platform for the assessment of the Nigerian Army's kinetic and non-kinetic operations, with special focus on evaluating the commitment of the Army to maintaining operational effectiveness.
The recent development in these theaters underscore the need for a meeting of this nature to enable us critically assess our operations and other activities with a view to bolstering our overall performance.
The Chief of Army Staff reiterates his commitment to protect Nigeria's sovereignty.
So far, we have had a large-scale surrender of terrorists and the submission of a substantial catch of arms and ammunition, which ordinarily might not have been possible through our kinetic efforts. To this end, the Nigerian Army will upscale both kinetic and non-kinetic efforts across all theaters in the coming year.
At a separate event, the Strategic Communications Interagency Policy Committee reeled out their achievements for the year.
The Armed Forces of Nigeria have conducted successful operations across key regions in Nigeria. And we have seen notable results under this period.
As expected, issues of security dominate the conference.
Just last week, we deployed a special operations brigade in the northwest of Nigeria, particularly because of the Lakurawa issue.
We have done strategic deployment, and our deployment across the country is not to intimidate anybody. It's for us to make sure all our routes, major highways, and communities are safe.
As the year 2024 winds down, spokespersons of the various security agencies appear united in their efforts to contain insurgency and all forms of security challenges confronting the nation.
It's time now for a short break. As we do, we remind you to visit our website, channelcv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. And still to come, a Ghanaian artist uses recycled fabrics to create eco masterpieces.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Nigeria has begun establishing 40,000 centers to convert petrol vehicles to gas-powered ones. It's all part of the government's plan to drive the country towards a greener, more sustainable energy future. Nigerian authorities have earmarked 1 million commercial vehicles on its roads for free conversion by 2027 to enable them run on gas and reduce reliance on the more costly petrol. Nigerian authorities launched a robust natural gas transition plan after scrapping petrol subsidy last year. Timothy Obizu reports.
Vehicles stretching hundreds of meters in line for gasoline is not unusual in Nigeria, but this is different. Here, desperate commuters are hoping to get compressed natural gas at one of the few centers dispensing CNG across the country.
We draw blood for Katsina, then we come back. We think say the thing no go carry us reach where we come from. That's why we come here. If we take we go back to Obajana for Kogi State.
Taxi driver Abdullahi Ashiru converted his vehicle 3 months ago and spends only a third of his daily gasoline budget to run on natural gas.
I've been here since, let's say, since 11 o'clock. See now, what is time now? At least I think to 4. I'm buying CNG.
Nigeria has the largest gas reserves in Africa, about 209 trillion cubic feet. And last year, shortly after scrapping gasoline subsidies, the government launched a robust natural gas transition initiative, including a plan to have 1 million CNG-powered vehicles on the roads in 3 years. Natural gas is a cheaper and cleaner fueling alternative for Nigerians, but Nigerian regulatory authorities say there are less than 50 compressed natural gas compression stations like this for the more than 200 million Nigerians trying to replace pricey fossil fuels like petrol and diesel. Gasoline prices have increased about 6-fold since the government scrapped its subsidy program last year, making more people eager to switch to natural gas. There are currently about 130 conversion centers, and authorities aim to establish hundreds more across the country by 2027. But many like Abuja resident Omotayo James say there's no need if CNG cannot be readily available.
At least we should have like 7 points in Abuja that is working only on hand before you start conversing for conversion. This is a federal road. This is a road that leads to airport. I don't know how Ashwadi Bola Ahmed want to go to airport and they want to stop car and they are seeing people on the road like this.
The government announced a plan to raise $250 million by 2027 to support CNG infrastructure development. But many say that intervention can't come soon enough. Timothy Obizu, VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
A contemporary artist, Michael Gar, based in Accra, Ghana, is using recycled fabrics as raw materials for his creations. He says it's his own way of utilizing unused scraps, strips of endemic fabrics, and encouraging eco-friendly behavior in his country.
I select this fabrics.
This is Michael Gar, searching and examining the fabric on display in local markets.
They are the ones that cause waste.
He purchases several pieces from the stacks of waste fabric scattered across the floor. Later, he carefully organizes the material before cutting it into pieces as he works on a new painting.
Growing up, I would say I saw my mom, my auntie, and my grandmom sewing. So I fell in love with these textile pieces. Anytime I wake up, I see them around me. And then I was a kid that was cutting stuff. So I intend to pick some of the design in it, and then I cut. So growing up, I said, why don't I use this fabric to create some of my pieces.
These are the pieces, according to him, which end up as waste, polluting the environment. Reflecting on his artistic journey, Michael recalls a pivotal conference he attended in Italy, where discussions around fashion waste and its detrimental impact on the ecosystem resonated deeply with him.
I had the opportunity to visit a conference in Italy where they highlighted this some point where textile waste is destroying our ecosystem. I work on like multiple pieces at the same time, like 4 works or 5 works at the same time, because I love to channel energy to all of them. So it may take like 2 to 3 weeks to finish these pieces.
With fashion offcuts from tailoring shops or second-hand markets, Michael's artworks are inspired by his environment in West Africa. His iconic portraits featuring faces without distinct features have drawn the attention of the art community, with participation in galleries organized in France, South Africa, and New York.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. To remember that channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joker Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.